Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to my webinar. We are just after the hour. It is 11 o'clock Eastern. So for those of you who are joining locally, so from Ontario or the Eastern time zone, welcome. Good morning. For those of you who are elsewhere in the world, good afternoon, good evening. It is Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. My name is Jade Calver. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. Today, I'll be talking about updates to permanent residency. I'll do a quick overview of the Express Entry program. I'll also briefly touch on PNPs, as well as any upcoming changes. As I'll note in a few minutes, today's webinar is very timely given the changes that occurred today. So the updates to Express Entry have already begun. The federal government announced these updates last December 2024, and today they were implemented. So I'll go over those changes, and I'll talk a little bit about what this means for permanent residency in 2025. For those of you who are applying for permanent residency, maybe you're an employer who employs foreign workers and you're wanting to help your employees through permanent residency. Maybe you're an immigration consultant or a lawyer who is wanting to help their clients through the permanent residency process. So to all of you, I say welcome. Again, a little bit about me. So my name is Jade Calver. I've been in private practice for just over 10 years now through my firm, which is Calver Immigration Consulting. I am based just east of Toronto in Ontario, but we do serve clients across the country and globally. So thank you so much for joining us. We are a small firm, so we're a boutique firm of 7 people, which includes myself. So I oversee and manage the firm. I'm very much involved in the day-to-day practice. We specialize in economic and business immigration, but we all are full service in that we work in business and economic immigration, but also family class, study permits, visitor visas, criminality issues, citizenship. We do it all. So we are small but mighty. So in the course of my career up until date, I want to preface this by saying, I've seen a lot of changes within our permanent residency systems with the political changes and public response that happens over time. I've seen the pendulum swing both ways to a more open immigration system, to a more closed immigration system, and then back again. And so for those of you who are applying for permanent residency, or for those of you who are maybe assisting your clients or your staff navigate this program, it is normal. It's not unheard of or unprecedented that we see such change when it comes to immigration policy in Canadian immigration. So please understand that it is normal that these changes do occur. So I wanted to start off this morning by first talking about the Express Entry system. It's one of Canada's main pathways for permanent residency in Canada for skilled workers. So it is a federal application. So it is administered by the federal government, so directly by Immigration Canada. It actually encompasses 3 main programs under Express Entry. So Express Entry is not an immigration program unto itself, but rather a ranking system for these 3 programs. So these are the Federal Skilled Worker Program, the Canadian Experience Class, as well as the Federal Skilled Trades Program. We also have provincial nominee programs that are aligned with the Express Entry system. So those are also grouped in under Express Entry as well. Not all provincial programs go through Express Entry, but some provinces do align their programs with Express Entry, so something to keep in mind. It includes something that is called a comprehensive ranking system. So you get points based off of your age, your level of education, your language levels in both English and or French, as well as your work experience. So you're given points for skilled work experience, either inside or outside of Canada or both. Up until as of today, you got points for job offers in Canada. that ended as of today, which I'll talk about in a moment. You can also get points for if you've studied in Canada, additional points if you've studied in Canada, if you have a sibling who is a Canadian or a permanent resident who lives in Canada. So the idea behind the system is that those who are likely to establish themselves in Canada for the long term, and stay here longer. So if you're younger, you're going to stay here longer, hopefully. They are given priority under this program. Under Express Entry, we also have specific draws. So if you go online to IRCC's website, you'll see that we have rounds of invitation that occur approximately weekly or every 2 weeks, inviting the candidates with the highest scores to apply. The government will do Provincial Nominee Program specific invitations. They'll also do all program draws sometimes. They'll do draws for Canadian experience class, meaning that only those with Canadian experience are invited. We also knew as of last year, we have French rounds of invitation, which have been quite popular recently. Those who have CLB 7 level higher, so that's intermediate to advanced level French, are actually invited to apply under the Express Entry system. We also have category-based rounds. So this is the government targeting those with specific occupation codes that are in high demand in Canada, notably those in the medical field, those in trades and transportation, those in STEM, so and also in agriculture. So we're seeing a shift generally in Express Entry to move towards more specific occupations. The French language thing is a political move. So, and it's not unprecedented either. I've been doing these federal permanent residency applications for a long time. Back when it was paper-based applications, the government did go in and do targeted you had to have experience in specific occupation codes. This was back, 10 years ago when they said only, engineers in specific occupations could apply under the Federal Skilled Worker Program. So something to think about, as you transition to permanent residency and evaluate your chances for Express Entry, for permanent residency under Express Entry, you have to be realistic about who's being invited under this permanent residency program, and are you actually competitive for permanent residency? Next, I wanted to talk about the importance of Express Entry profile optimization. So just to touch on the Express Entry process. So first, applicants will create an Express Entry profile. So that's where you fill out the information. It's free to do so, and you create an Express Entry profile. You have to qualify for at least one of the Express Entry programs in order to create this Express Entry profile. In order to do so, most people will need to have their language exam results, as well as either their Canadian education diploma or an equivalency report for a foreign degree. Next is we enter you into the pool and you receive what's called a comprehensive ranking system score. So you get a score of approximately, it can be anywhere from low 300s up into the 600s or above if you have a provincial nomination. Next is that, as I said earlier, the government does rounds of invitation approximately every 2 weeks. Sometimes they'll do one weekly. And those who qualify for that round, who have the highest scores. So they'll say we're inviting, let's say, approximately 2,000 people under this round of invitation. And if you qualify for that round of invitation, and if you have the highest of those 2,000 scores, you'll receive an invitation to apply. Then you have 60 days to submit an application to the federal government. And then the federal government makes a decision during the processing times, which are about 6 to 8 months after you've made an application. A few ways to improve your CRS score for Express Entry. So clients will often put in a profile and they realize, only after they've put in a profile that their score is a little bit low and they maybe don't stand a very good chance at the moment to get invited through Express Entry. So one of the easiest and quickest ways is to increase your language proficiency score. When I have a consultation with a client, I always take a look at their IELTS, or you can take the IELTS, the CELPIP, or the PTE for English. For French, it's the TEF or the TCF. If you speak both languages, 100% take both. If I have a consultation with a client and I see that they have high proficiency in English, but maybe one of their bands are low in their language scores, I'll immediately send them back to redo their language exams. Same thing if they speak French and they haven't taken a French exam, I'll always go and send them to do that. You can gain more skilled work experience. So the Express Entry system gives points for both out of Canada skilled work. So that means it's in a tier level 3 or higher for both out of Canada as well as in Canada work. The in Canada work has to be done on a valid work permit. Out of Canada, you don't need a work permit. So you can do work that's outside of Canada. Interestingly enough, there is the immigration department interprets out of Canada work as work that you don't need a work permit for. So if you're in Canada and you're gaining work experience on a work permit, but you also are doing out of Canada work whilst you're here on a work permit, so you're working remotely for, let's say, a company outside of Canada, that work experience will also count towards the out of Canada work experience. So it is a technique that we are using more and more for our clients to make sure that they are competitive within the pool. Next is you can also obtain a provincial nomination. If you are working in a province and you qualify for one of their programs that is Express Entry aligned, we will always now for our clients review their eligibility for a provincial nomination within that province. So most of our clients who come to us for Express Entry, as long as their employer will support the application and if their job qualifies them for it, will also always submit a profile under their respective provincial nominee program. And then lastly, if you are married or if you have a common law partner, we'll also look at their education as well as their Canadian work experience to see if we can add any additional points from, they get points for their education, any Canadian work experience, as well as their language results. So if you have a spouse or a common law partner, that's also a way to boost your scores under Express Entry. A few changes to Express Entry for this year. So a big update is as of today, so this is, as I said, very timely, the government has announced that it has ended the job offer points. So either the 200 points for a senior level occupation code or 50 points for any other skilled occupation code. Prior to today, if you had an LMIA or if you had an LMIA exempt work permit that was a closed work permit, you could claim these job offer points if you had worked on a work permit for 1 year, you could claim those job offer points in Express Entry. However, as of today, that is no longer, unless you have an active invitation to apply, you can actually no longer claim these points. Another big update is that we're seeing quite a lot of French language draws. So funnily enough, we're seeing clients who are actively, if they have some proficiency in French, they're actively learning French to add those points to their Express Entry profiles. As I noted earlier, we're also seeing category-based draws. This is really interesting, especially if you are on the younger side. So you get maximum points up until the age of 30 in Express Entry. And after that, you lose points up until the age of 45. You're not given points after the age of 45. But I've seen some clients who are actually outside of Canada who have high language results, and they have a bachelor's or a master's degree. They actually are quite competitive without any Canadian work experience or education whilst they're outside of Canada. So that has been an interesting policy change where we've seen some of our clients from outside of Canada be eligible for Express Entry. And then we've seen, as of the result of the updates to Express Entry, some new tier codes that were previously not included in Express Entry. They've now been added to Express Entry as eligible work experience occupations to include in your Express Entry profile. So that has been a great update for our candidates. Okay, so moving on, I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about the provincial nominee programs. This is this is something that I think candidates should be looking to. As I said, as a firm, we always entertain the PNP eligibility for our clients now. It's no longer, we used to take a client and say, okay, you're eligible for Express Entry, you're likely to get an invitation to apply, and then we would wait for the ITA and off we would go. Now, given the competitive nature of Express Entry, we will always, we look at a client's eligibility for permanent residency programs holistically, meaning that we explore all avenues, so including both the Federal Express Entry program as well as their the PNPs that the client may qualify for. So effectively how these programs work is that each province is allotted spots by the federal government to nominate immigrants that province would like to settle in that respective province. So each province has, so it can have, they really do have a lot of leeway in designing their programs. We have employer-driven streams, so if you have a job offer, occupation and demand streams, Express Entry link streams. I didn't put this here, but most of the provinces, they try to keep the international students who have studied in that province in their province. So for example, Ontario has master's programs and PhD programs for those who have studied. It also has programs if you have studied for at least a year in Ontario, and if you have a job offer by an eligible employer, you can also qualify for a student job offer program. So it's definitely something to look into and to always consider as an applicant or as a representative who is submitting an application for their clients. Some key, and it's interesting because clients come to me, and I think this is really pertinent, especially if you're in Canada as an international student, or maybe you've just applied for a postgraduate work permit. If your Express Entry points are low, and if you don't necessarily have a job offer in a province like Ontario or British Columbia, where it's quite competitive for permanent residency, I always tell my clients to take a look at some of the other provinces. I've put them here at the bottom. Saskatchewan and Manitoba are really great. I also like New Brunswick as well. They are programs in which if you have work experience in that province and then you and you have an employer who's going to support you for a permanent residency application, they can be really great alternatives to maybe staying in Ontario or British Columbia. Not that I don't want you to stay in Ontario, but I am agnostic when it comes to where my clients settle. It is something that we will come up with as a strategy for our clients to help them transition to permanent residency. Okay, just to finish off, I just wanted to talk about the changes to permanent residency programs in general. So as I talked about earlier with Express Entry, we're seeing adjustments to the CRS scoring factors. So job offer points are no longer valid under Express Entry. So ultimately, I think that what will happen here is that we'll see clients who have Canadian work experience and Canadian education, they're going to become much more competitive for permanent residency. I'm really hoping the points will go down for qualifying for permanent residency. I also think that those who are in Canada who have that foreign work experience, and remember, I talked about that technique of using, you're going to have to work 2 full-time jobs, but using that foreign remote work experience to count towards your Express Entry profile, that can be very helpful for you. I think also that in general, there's a movement, even with the upcoming election, I think both major candidates are announcing a reduction in immigration. So I think overall, we're likely to see less rounds and less spots allocated for all programs, but this also includes Express Entry. I think that as a result of the job offer points being taken away from Express Entry, I think that we're going to see more people who are applying through the Provincial Nominee Programs. So I think that those programs, as a result of this express entry change, and also as a result of the provinces also having less spots for provincial nominations, I think that we're going to see more competitive PNPs. And we've also seen, I haven't touched on it too much today, but we've seen some new pilot programs from the federal government. One of them is the home care immigration pilot. So that's for caregivers of both children and older people, as well as people with disabilities. So March 31st, that program opens for those who already have Canadian work experience. Those who are outside of Canada will have to wait for the program to open. We also saw the Rural Community Immigration Pilot open. That's for people who have a job offer in participating rural communities. So in Ontario, it's places like Sudbury, Ontario, Thunder Bay. They're rural cities and towns that have problems. They have a declining population. So the idea is that they are given a special allocation from the federal government for supporting those who have either studied or worked in those communities for a direct to permanent residency program. Great, so a few key takeaways from today. So understanding both express entry as well as the provincial nominee programs, it's crucial at the moment for success for permanent residency. Don't sleep on the PNP programs. Keep up to date with policy changes. If you don't already follow me on LinkedIn or on social media, so both Instagram and TikTok, I post regular policy updates and changes from both the federal and provincial governments. So please follow me and keep up to date on those changes. I'm also telling clients to make sure that you are protecting your temporary status at all costs. So, and if you are an immigration consultant or an immigration lawyer watching this, I am now telling clients if they come to me and if they have a permit that expires in 1 year or less, I start having that discussion about what are we doing to maintain your temporary status? Yes, you may be worried about permanent residency, but what are we going to do to actually protect your temporary status in Canada? So the LMIA is key in doing that. We can also use provincial nominee programs to help with your temporary work permit. Open work permits are often not extendable unless you only had a work permit issued based off of passport validity. So make sure that you're protecting your temporary status. And then, as always, make sure that you are seeking professional guidance on navigating immigration changes. I think that there are a lot of, YouTube consultants, as I call them out there, that are giving advice that is not necessarily well advised or applicable to your case. So please, if you're an attendee today, book a consultation with me. We're online at calverimmigrationservices.com. I will open the floor to questions for the next 10 minutes. Please feel free to pop your questions into the chat. I'll stay on for another 10 to 15 minutes just to answer any questions that you have about permanent residency, applications in general, changes from today to the express entry system, anything that you have, any questions that you have about the PR system or work permits, I'm here to help. Once again, my name is Jade Calver. We're online at calverimmigrationservices.com. Please follow me on Instagram, TikTok. I'm also on LinkedIn. That's where I post my regular policy updates and changes to both federal and provincial immigration programs. Once again, you can book a consultation directly with me online. We're online at calverimmigrationservices.com. Thanks again so much for joining me. I will pop into the chat and we will check out the questions and we can go from there. Once again, have a wonderful day and thanks again for joining me. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm happy to help. Okay, guys, so thanks again so much for joining me. If you have any questions, once again, we're online at calverimmigrationservices.com. If you're joining this or watching this after the live broadcast, please feel free to message us with any questions that you have. We are available for consultations Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. You can book a consultation with me. Oh, here's some questions here. Someone asks, okay, you guys were just shy with your questions. For workers and employers who just went through the job offer hiring and we're counting on those LMIA points now, what strategies make sense? Great. So I think that, Harper, that's a good question. I think that the LMIA is still good in that it will allow you to extend your work permit and work permits for your families. The as a result of that, you compared to somebody who's in the same situation without an LMIA, you're going to be able to gain additional Canadian work experience. So that will up your points in express entry. Same thing, it'll make it so that you get more points in a provincial nominee program. I also think that for those candidates, you would also take a look at the ways to boost your CRS points that I went through. So the language results, so both English and French, gaining foreign work experience at the same time, upping your education, your education levels if possible. All of these things can contribute to a higher CRS score. Arsheen says, now that the job offer points on Express Entry are gone, what happens to business owner operators? Is that streamed on then? Arsheen, so that's a really good question. I think that strategically for owner operators, well, I think that it makes more sense for someone coming into Canada now to probably take a look at partnering with a Canadian employer so that they are treated as an employee by our immigration systems. They will no longer be able to claim job offer points, but remember, if you're self-employed on a work permit, you also cannot claim work experience points. So maybe it makes more sense to get an LMIA, with a business where you're more of an employee as opposed to an owner operator. But yes, I agree with you, Arsheen. It's not good for business people in Canada because it has effectively stopped the true owner operator LMIAs from transitioning to permanent residency through express entry. You can still get the LMIA, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be able to transition through permanent resident through the express entry system. Another person asks, how have recent changes to the express entry system affected the CRS scores? So we don't know. I mean, as of the changes just happened today. I'm hoping that the points will go down. So keep in mind that everybody who had, especially if they had a senior NOC LMIA, which I did a lot of, that's everyone who had 200 points through express entry. They're actually going to lose those points. So I think overall, the points in general will likely decrease. Same thing, everybody who had 50 points will no longer have 50 points. So I think that we'll see a correction in the, I think we'll see a correction in express entry where we'll see the points overall needed to qualify for permanent residency go down. Next, someone asks, how might these changes affect international students and temporary foreign workers seeking PR? I think that we still have a lot of people in Canada who are wanting to, I think we still have an excess demand issue in Canada. I think that international students need to be very careful about where they're getting a work after they graduate from their course. I think even students before they come to Canada need to be very careful about where they're going to study so that they can be strategic about transitioning to PR. Someone asks, what measures can applicants take to ensure timely processing of their applications? Well, for express entry, I mean, you're going to really have it's going to be for a lot of our candidates, one shot and you're done. I've seen clients who have DIY'd, so they've done their own express entry applications only to have them returned as incomplete because of missing translations or an incorrect police certificate from a country. So you do have to be very mindful of making sure that you have the documents right. You only have 60 days to put together an application. So making sure that your documents are right the first time is going to be especially crucial. And then last question for today. So are there specific occupations currently prioritized under express entry? Yeah, so as I talked about, we have those category-based draws. They haven't done one for a while, but those are healthcare, So nurses, physicians, I'll send out a full list, and when I send out this recording, agriculture, trades and transportation, and then one other, which I said earlier, which I can't remember at the moment. It'll come to me. But STEM, sorry. So the STEM is the fourth one. So those are occupations. So there are a whole categories of occupations that sit within those broader categories that are going to be prioritized for express entry applications. Great. So we are over the time for today. So thank you everyone for joining me. Once again, if you are watching this after the recording, please reach out to me if you have any questions. Happy to assist with your permanent residency planning. Once again, we're full service. So whether you're looking for a study permit, a visitor visa, a work permit, if you have criminality issues, maybe you're out of status or you've had a work permit refusal, we're happy to assist. Once again, we're online at calverimmigrationservices.com.